Here are some of the rules that we had to follow as K-pop trainees. Number 1 was weight checks every morning. We would weigh ourselves first thing in the morning when getting to practice and then send a picture of the scale to the training team. Eventually, the training team started weighing us in person and they would weigh us at random, so we would always be on edge. Another thing that we had to be aware of was phone checks. They wouldn't do this often, but sometimes they would just take our phones and then look through them. There's actually a time where they asked for any old usernames and passwords as well as any names that we had used online. From there, they just went and tried to erase our online presence as much as possible. So like old YouTube videos that I was in, pictures of me that were online, and like my old Twitter account that I made when I was 13, they were all gone from the internet. So on that same note, we weren't allowed to have any social media, but aside from like snacking and not dieting, that was probably the biggest rule break because all the trainees had private Instagrams. Another thing that's a little more obvious is no alcohol, drugs, or smoking, even if you were of age. There was this one trainee that had joined at one point, and immediately some girls got like a bad vibe from her, and eventually rumors were spread that she was like smoking in the bathroom. Then some girls found pictures of her online, underage drinking at a bar, and then after that, a few girls that were sharing the same practice room as her saw cigarettes, like a box of cigarettes, drop out of her jacket. That was like the final straw. They took all the evidence and stuff and then went to the training team and got the girl kicked out like the next day. Another thing that mostly applied to foreigners was that we weren't allowed to speak in any other language aside from Korean. All of the lessons were done in Korean, so if you had trouble understanding, you just had to deal with it. Another rule was that we weren't allowed to wear makeup or have untied hair. Aside from times where we had like styling classes or like test photo shoots where we would get our hair and makeup done, or monthly evaluations where we were allowed to do like minimal makeup, we weren't allowed to have any makeup on, and we also had to tie our hair up whenever we were practicing. Another thing was that we weren't allowed to wear leggings outside of practice. Before dance practice, they always wanted us to wear like tighter tops and like leggings so that the dance teacher could easily correct our lines, but outside of practice we weren't allowed to wear leggings, and I think this has to do with like the culture of Korea. They would look at the CCTV to make sure that we got to practice wearing loose-fitting pants. Before we left for practice, we would always have to change into loose-fitting pants or wear loose-fitting pants over our leggings. Another thing was that we weren't allowed to change our hair or do our nails without the company's like permission. If you wanted to like dye your hair, cut bangs, or cut your hair even just like a shorter length, you would have to ask the company first, and the answer would usually be no. Girls pretty much just only had their natural hair colors and kept their hair at like a longer length. The last thing they made us do was send a picture of the clock when we got back from practice. So as we left for practice, we would send the training team a text and also the videos that we had taken for that day. And then after we got back from practice, they would expect us to take a picture of like the clock or a watch to show the time that we had gotten back. And they would just like compare the commute times day by day. Finally, the last thing that we had to be aware of was that we were being watched by CCTV. There were cameras in the corner of every single practice room, and the training team had access to live footage on their phones, so they would just always be monitoring us. If you were sitting down for too long, looking at your phone or your iPad for too long, the training team would send a text immediately on Kakao Talk and scolding you to get back to practice. In the end, we realized that the training team doesn't really wake up that early, so in the mornings we would kind of do whatever we wanted and would like nap in the blind spots or like eat snacks and breakfast. There was a time that we did get caught, but this is getting a little long.